All right, folks, how you doing? Welcome back. So this is the Silurian Wars with Rome, Part 2. Disclaimer: under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Once again, we're going into The Great Deception by Commons Beaumont, related to Scandinavia. So the Bible name for Ascanians or Ascanaxians is Ashkenaz, long a puzzle to classic and biblical writers, for as Sir William Smith admits in his classical dictionary, quote, Ascania or Ashkenaz was related to Scandinavia, and yet in common with other peoples supposedly Asiatic, is ascribed to the region of a small freshwater lake in Asia Minor. Many of the names associated with the supposed region of the Troad, such as Mysia, the Morini, Teuthrynia, Pergamus, and Phrygia itself, placed arbitrarily in Asia, may be retraced in northern Europe, near the Baltic Sea within the regions of Odin's Asar. The war with Agamemnon. Hellespontine Phrygia was where is now Schleswig-Holstein, and Phrygia proper embraced the lands west of the Albis River, the Greek Halys, now the Elbe, a region which, as stated in the time of Charlemagne, was named Frisia, a slight variation of Phrygia, and where stood Troy. With Scania, otherwise Scandia, a few words may be said about Ilium, or Troy, traditionally founded by Teucer and Scamander, both Eloids of Crete, Shetland, who took the worship of Apollo Smintheus with them, and hence the gods assumed partiality for the Trojans in the war with Agamemnon and the Greeks. The original Shetland Orkney Island. So the claim made by the German Schliemann in the 19th century to have discovered the ruins of Troy at Hisselrig was, like many such, based more on caprice than any proofs. For having discovered ruins at that place, he decided they were those of Troy. We may understand better that the geographical connection from place names of contiguous sites and other factors, that when it was said that Troy was a, quote, daughter of Crete, and we are aware that Crete was the original Shetland Orkney Island, how it came to be established in the region of Ascania, which gave its name to Trojan Ascanius, just as it gave Scandinavia its name. The sons of Bor. It is moreover in agreement with the situation as reconstructed that Odin, whose invasion in the north of Europe created immense turmoil in a prehistoric period, gave the name, quote, Asia to these regions, and according to the Prose Edda was king of Troy. Also that the later Edda says that Troy was built by the sons of Bor or Bur, who raised altars and temples on the Idavol. For the sons of, quote, Bor, the Borides, or sons of Ebor or Eber, were the original Cretans, whose great city was Ur or Bor. In other words, the Trojans were racially Galatii or Gauls from northern Scotland. Thomas Baxter, the learned 18th century antiquarian, described the Phrygians as those who became masters of all Western Europe, the oldest civilized people. They used, says he, the name of Briges, Bruges, or Phryges, and he claimed that the Brigantes of Britain were of that same race. He related them to the Phoenicians or Chaldeans, and says that they called themselves Britas, Britones, or Britanni. They also claimed descent from Gad, which must finally establish their origin as from northern Britain in a long prehistoric period. As to this, Herodotus is helpful. According to him, the Phrygians claimed to be the oldest civilized people, but the Briges of Thrace and Macedonia took exception to this boast and declared that the Phrygians were descendants of theirs, and took the name of Phryges later. In fact, Briges, Phryges, Phrygus, or Phryses vary only in the slightest degree, due probably to a provincial colloquialism often found in proper names. Forgive me, by the way, if I'm mispronouncing any of those. The very ancient city of Hamburg. So the Phrygians or Trojans intermixed with the existing British population as one of themselves and do not appear as aliens in their history, nor should they. Exactly where Troy stood is necessarily speculative, for it was largely destroyed by the Great Catastrophe shortly after its fall, and does not appear from records to have been rebuilt in the Classic Ages. On the Elbe, however, the earlier Albis, stands the very ancient city of Hamburg, whose name portends a city of Ham or Ammon or Gad, with its port at the mouth of the river Cuxhaven, which suggests the haven of Cush, termed themselves Albans. So the modern Hamburg owes its foundation to Charlemagne, who erected a citadel and a church on the heights between the eastern bank of the river Alster, a height that may have been the site of the ancient Mount Ida, but only close archaeological research could discover if any evidence yet exists. It is worth recalling that the Trojans who migrated to Britain at once named their city Alba and termed themselves Albans, indicating a former connection with the Albus. I shall venture one other item relating to Phrygia. Herodotus relates how some Mysians and Teucrians, named after Teucer, one of the two traditional founders of Troy, invaded Hellas from Phrygia and proceeded to the river Peneus and the Ionian Sea after crossing the Bosporus, landing in Thrace. This is quite explicable. The Mosa, or the Meuse, and the Rhine. They passed through Denmark, crossed by the short passage to Norway, then by boat reached a port in Caledonia, where they made their way through the chain of lochs from Loch Ness to the mouth of Loch Lynn. In Mysia dwelt the Teuchthranes or Teuthranes, descendants of Teucer, described by Caesar as Teuthrani or Teuchtheri, both incorrect, but identifying the people who were settled, he says, at the confluence of the Mouse, and the Rhine. The Mouse derived its name from Mysia, a variation of Moses. A city of considerable importance in the city of Mysia was Pergamus, celebrated for its fabrics, arts, and learning, while off the coast lay a number of isles which correspond with the Frisian Isles. King Attalus III. So Pergamus was a pagan cathedral city. How can it be a pagan cathedral? I don't get that, but anyway. And a university, and was the royal residence of kings. Here, Dionysus, Aphrodite, and you see this? Escula. You can see it on the screen. Were all worshipped, and in one of its temples was the quote throne of Satan. Asclepius, maybe that's how you say it. It became an early seat of Christianity, one of the 7 churches of quote unquote Asia. The Pergamine king Attalus III made the Romans his heirs in 133 BC, and they were planted at Colonia in 51 AD, which city is now Cologne. Mysia was a widely spread region, but not a state. To return to the Trojans in Britain, although Josephus says that the Ascanians or Ascanacs were called Rhegians by the Greeks, he does not explain why. The reason is that the bulk of them from the river Albus to Bruges, originally in Phrygia or Frisia, settled in Rhegium, now a part of Graecia Magna, and later named Bruttium after Brutus, the kingdom of Strathclyde. Now, the Rhegium was that very same part of Britain as set out by the Dalriads, my own ancestors, already described as in the peninsula of Wiggintownshire in the western lowlands, called the Rins of Galloway, with Dumfries, Kirkcudbright, and perhaps Ayr as their territories. It obtained the name of Rhegium because it was known as Reged to the ancient Britons. In the days of King Arthur, who, by the way, absolutely fucking existed, and Arthur's seat in Edinburgh is absolutely fucking named after him. I don't care about any other daft alternative explanations. Who the fuck do you think Arthur's seat is named after? Your uncle. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting on a rant. But anyway, in the days of King Arthur, Sir Owain, one of his far-famed knights, who was the son of Urien, Prince of Reged, sometimes given the title of king, it seems possible that Brutus himself left Alva or Alba to Silvius Alba and retained the lands of Rhegium from the Clyde to the Solway Firth, the actual Albany, which became the later Kingdom of Strathclyde and to this day is a royal dukedom. King Fergus mac Airk. However, as late as AD 496, according to the ancient Scottish Chronicle and the De Sute Albani, King Fergus mac Air reigned from Mons Drumalbin to the quote Mayor Hiberniate Inchgal, the Irish Sea in Galloway. Interesting, by the way, how it's Mons Drumalbin, and I've been making the presentations about Mars, and you've got the mountains on Mars called Mons. It's just a little thing I picked up on. It's a minor thing, but it's just something that I noticed. Anyway, so Drum Alban lay south of Glen Mork nan Alban, the Great Valley of Alban. The Caledonian line of lochs from Moray Firth mentioned as the farthest limit. Thus the kingdom of Fergus extended over Perthshire, and according to one account, held apart with the tribe Dalriada, cum gentes Dalriadi partes Britanniae. The Albions or Albanians appear in the Welsh annals as late as 1085 and 1091. I'm going to try to read that. And Whatmore asserts that the native Scots in the former Albanian territory still call it Alba and Albion. The original and true Hellas. There seems to be no shadow of doubt, therefore, regarding the Trojan settlements in Britain, and the same can be claimed for Ireland, with post-Diluvian migrations to then largely deserted areas. This confirms earlier claims to Britain's great antiquity because, according to the Roman legends, Aeneas and other heroes from Troy went to Epirus. So indeed they did, except that the original Epirus in Hellas or Greece was actually that part of Scotland known as Perthshire and Fifeshire, for Scotland was the original and true Hellas. In ancient Greece, the Epirus, meaning the mainland as opposed to the Peloponnese, was a wide region bordered in one direction by Aetolia, now the Athol country, and Thessaly, Argyllshire, while Acarnania and Ambratia were to its southeast, so basically Fife, and beyond Acarnania, the Thesprotis region, Stirling, whose Caron River answers to the Acheron, the region of Thesprotis. Adjoining Thesprotis, Ilaria began, where stood Jerusalem, now Edinburgh. Let us inquire into this further. The earliest arrivals from Troy, who traditionally settled in Thesprotis, were Pyrrhus, son of Achilles, with Andromache, widow of Hector, whom he took to wife. Pyrrhus having died, she wedded Helenus, the prophet son of Priam, the high priest and king of Troy, slain by Pyrrhus. They settled in the region of Thesprotis, named Chaonia, which, as will be seen, was the very self-same area of Britain, which the Britons and Romans gave the name of Damnia, both names implying a region at one time suffering from chaos by the act of the deity. Helenus, able to, quote, divine the sweet will of Phoebus, meaning that he was an astronomer, especially watching the star Sirius, reigned in the, quote, city, probably a fort or a castle, which he built and named Buthrotus, or New Troy. It was, says Virgil, a miniature Troy, for there, on a height, he erected his Pergamos, or fortress, like the original on Mount Ida. The Roman poet describes how Aeneas, after his lengthy voyage, which seems to have included Ireland and the whole coastline of Britain, eventually entered the Chaonian port and ascended the city of Buthrotus, accompanied by his son Ascanius. In the third book of the Aeneid, he says, a fertile country, quote, skirting Epirus coast, Chaonia's port, that Helenus, Priam's son, over Greeks bore away, succeeding to the throne and bed of Pyrrhus, Pyrrhus dead, part of this realm to Helenus demised, who Chaonia's plain by title, New Troy, Chaon called, and built him walls and ramparts on the steep, whose names remind of Pergamus and Troy. In pensive thought I traced the town, the miniature of Troy, its yellow sunken stream, its fort, surnamed, quote, of Pergamus. Chaonia was a fertile country, famed for its oaks and acorns, but it obtained its name because here had occurred fearful destruction from the skies at the time of the great catastrophe. which only the word chaos actually describes. Campsie Fells, the land of the damned. In Keonica flowed the river Acheron, not the same river as in the western underworld, which rises in Campsie Fells. In classic times, the Ceredigion Mountains lay on the frontier of Illyria, as the Acheron is the Caron of Stirlingshire. Here in the Campsie Fells can be discerned why the region earned the name Chaos, or the Land of the Damned. Their heights are composed of igneous rocks with sheets of lava. At Dunglass, a meteoritic crater contains the same columnar basalt as found in the Hebridean Sea in Staffa. Been there, by the way, which points to its formation as of the same period, the impact doubtless causing destruction over a wide area. Stirling Castle, at the other end of the country, is of course the outstanding landmark in these parts, while the River Forth flows at its foot, or with the River Forth flowing at its foot. Stirling, New Troy. So whatever may be said of the claims of London to the name of Trinovantum or New Troy, Stirling, with its ancient foundation and remains, was definitely New Troy in the eyes of the Trojan invaders, who actually called the river Thymus. It is surprising how many place names survive all vicissitudes and changes of ownership and even language. Homer, for example, has for ages puzzled scholars by describing how the Taphians from the coast of Acarnania set sail to Temesa to barter steel or iron for brass. The Tafia Isles, now submerged, lay off the mouth of the Tay, and the Taphians sailed around Fife or Acarnania to the Forth or Temesa or Thymus, presumably Stirling. Argos, Philoki, loch surrounded. An important town in Acarnania is probably the present Largo, a very ancient settlement. Trinovantium in the Firth of Forth. So in Thesprotis or Chaonica, traditionally congregated many survivors of the Trojan War, and from there also did Brutus expel his, quote, intrepid brother across the Sea of Icht, or Pich, the North Sea, and became by superior power of arms master of the later Albania or Albion from the how do you say this? Brendalabine Mountains to the Solway Firth. Geoffrey of Monmouth gives a colourful but fictitious picture of Brutus's adventures, whereby, as the son of Ascanius, at the age of 15, he killed his parents accidentally with a dart, was driven away by his townfolk, and so landed in Britain. Excuse me. That New Troy or Trinovantum lay in the Firth of Forth reveals the need of revision in prehistory and geography, so often deceptive and misleading. Troy's overthrow by Agamemnon. So it suffices to state at the moment that its true site obtains confirmation from an early Norse Edda cited by Dr. Waddell, which mentions True Stirling, in conjunction with Heddon's Ale, Edinburgh, while they are really not very far from each other, as furnishing warships against the marauding Huns. Its situation is further instructive because Albania geographically adjoined Illyria, and the Alani or Partheni were related in an historical sense with Albania, as is confirmed in place names by Allan Water, Bridge of Allan, Strath Allan, etc., and the surname of Allan, common in these parts of Scotland. Aeneas, Pyrrhus, Andromache, and Helenus all relate to the area of Troy's overthrow by Agamemnon and his Greeks, a date generally ascribed to circa 1184 BC, but on the evidence of the Golspie stone confirmed by the Sothic cycle movement, it occurred nearly 140 years earlier, shortly prior to the flood of Noah, otherwise the Great Catastrophe. For reasons advanced in my prior volume, there are strong grounds for the belief, originated by Jacob Bryant, which attracted wide attention in the late 18th century, that the armament which Agamemnon, king of Argos from the western Scottish lands, led against Troy was really an Egypto-Cimmerian expedition in which Agamemnon, Aga, a title meaning hero, was actually Sesostris, king of Egypt. whose kingdom may be said to have stretched from Rossshire in the north to the very south of England, west of the Pennine chain, including Wales and much of Ireland. The geography and the period in question can explain why so few of the Homeric heroes were able to return to their original homes, being either shipwrecked or carried away by phenomenal storms. So, very, very interesting indeed. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below, and I'll see you the next time. Cheers.